Nathan Dean, and I am the co-offense coordinator and kicking coach at Nelsonville-York High School. So growing up, other than just loving playing the game, I was always around my father growing up, and he ran our youth program for, by the time he was done, it was about 26 years. So I was just kind of grew up in the life of it. I was always around the game, whether I was a water boy or a manager or, helping behind the scenes. And then I got to high school and I was able to actually, help out and assist with the youth. So that's kind of where it started. I really didn't think that it would go anywhere from that. I went on, I played a little bit in college, and then when that time came to an end, I thought it was best bet for me to come back home and whatever I learned, try to help and give back. That just kind of took off from there, and I've loved it ever since. So I didn't see myself being a coach, but from that point on, I can't see myself doing anything else. I used to be very quick and look at just little things here and there of like, we have to make a huge adjustment because of this, and I wasn't as patient as I am now. I think little things used to anger me because they weren't perfect, and now I realize that you don't have to be perfect in the game. You just have to stack little things upon each other. Little victories, that's when you stack little victories one on top of another, they add up. And so at first I thought for example, every play needed to score a touchdown or had the ability to score a touchdown. And that's just crazy to think. Now, 13 years later, I realize, we can take little victories because they're going to add up in the end. A lot of what I do is I like to look at, tradition and build the stepping stones or the bricks that were laid before everyone who got there, and try to, bring out this motivation from within to add on to tradition, to add on to a culture, to a program, and uphold the standards that were already there. And, we have such a great tradition here that I constantly talk about, when you guys come back here in 10 years and 15 years and 20 years, you want to look and see what's written on our wall out there. You want to look and see and be able to point to your kids and way on down the road to your grandkids, like, I was part of this team. Look what we did in these 3 or 4 years. Look what we did. This was the tradition and culture that I helped build and that I helped contribute with. And I think that does a really good job motivating our students and motivating our kids to give absolutely everything they can. I think my biggest challenge as a football coach would be probably just still adapting every single day to how the game changes. There are times I can see myself getting stuck in my ways of how either something I learned growing up, how I did it growing up, how it was taught to me growing up. I learned something different when I went to college, and then I try to implement that, and then the game changes so fast that sometimes it might take me a second to get to where I need to be. Other times I think I try to move too fast, and I got to look at using the skill around us, using the players that we have, and not making those players fit a system, but finding a system that fits the players. Grace with that, there's humility with that, and you'll get back to where you need to be. You'll get back to where you're having success, you're winning, you're doing the things right. There's just going to be times where it's like, they got the best of us, and you have to accept that. That's being mature. That's understanding how the game goes. You just got to prepare for what to do after that. Listen and learn. Like I said, I talked earlier about learning or trying to get upset because I might not, we might not be doing something the way that I learned it or the way that I think it needs to go. But the longer I'm part of this and the more experience I have of being around different coaches who have had success and have been leaders of young men, for years before I had the opportunity to start coaching, there are different ways to win. There are different, routes to success. So just learning, how to become the best coach I can be, how to become the best man I can be. I've had some phenomenal role models, and I truly do think that I learn every single day. My dad, he used to have a phrase. It was always be a student of the game. And before I thought it was, like the game of football changes. Make sure you're always watching film. Make sure you're always studying. Make sure you're always going to camps. You're always drilling. But it really comes down to life, and you can put that, you can use that wordage, you could use that phrase with really anything in life. Being a student of the game doesn't mean just the game of football, it means the game of life. So it could be how to be a leader, and it doesn't have to be on a football field or baseball field or basketball court or wrestling mat. It doesn't have to be anywhere other than where you need it to be. It could be in life, it could be as a man, it could be as a husband, as a father. And like I said, I've had some tremendous role models where I have been able to learn from them and become a student of life from them. What makes a good football team is you have young men that are not only learning about life, they're learning about themselves, they're learning how to handle adversity, they can overcome different obstacles, and they use critical thinking skills that they've learned from going through practices, film, game type situations, one-on-one talks with coaches or mentors. Obviously wins and losses isn't going to be something that's the only thing that makes a successful football team. But when you get a lot of people in your community that say, you have some great young men, that's what truly, I think, measures success. I would say just, students who bought in. We had guys who bought in. They were in the weight room. They were watching film. Probably the most, the most film that any group has ever watched on their own. They went to practice prepared already. They knew formations, they knew different gimmicky plays that the other team was running. They could tell what was coming based off of where they were lined up or who was in the ball game. They were very, very, very well prepared for every single game. I would say they're probably the most prepared team we've had since I've been here. As long as Nelsonville-York's tradition is upheld by not only the coaches at the high school level, but the players themselves, the coaches at our middle school, and the coaches at our youth, because it really does come from our youth. We start the building blocks there. They learn our basic fundamentals, they learn our offense, they learn about our culture and our pride. So I would say that is our future is in good hands as long as that's taken care of.